I gave my parents $72,000 over 3 years, but when they betrayed me at Christmas and chose my freeloading brother, I took ruthless revenge. Man, I never thought I'd be typing this out at 2 in the morning, sitting in my home office, but after the love show that went down this Christmas, I need to get this off my chest. I've been lurking on this sub for months, reading other people's stories, thinking, damn, at least my family's not that bad. Well, it turns out I was wrong, so love wrong. For context, I'm 34, and I've spent the last 8 years climbing the ladder in medical device sales. You know those crazy expensive machines and implants that keep people alive in hospitals? That's my world. And let me tell you, it wasn't handed to me on a silver platter like my parents seemed to think. My first year in the business, I lived out of my 2008 Honda Civic. No joke, commission-only sales are brutal when you're starting out. Imagine trying to convince surgeons to trust you with their patients' lives when you're sleeping in a Planet Fitness parking lot and showering at the gym. But that's what it took to break into the industry. My parents thought I was insane for giving up my stable office job, a boring-as-hell data entry gig that was slowly killing my soul, to pursue this. Why can't you just be happy with a normal job? Was their favorite line back then. But I grinded hard. I'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, hit the gym by 5, because looking professional matters in this industry. I'd be on the road by 7 and usually didn't finish with surgeons until late. Sometimes I'd be in the operating room until 9 at night, watching procedures to learn the equipment better. That first year was hell, but it paid off. I hit top seller in my region 3 years running, now pulling in solid 6 figures. I'm not trying to flex, trust me, this matters for the story. I built myself up from literally nothing. I've got my own place now. A decent 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. Nothing crazy luxurious, but it's mine. And yeah, I'm single. I dated here and there, had a serious relationship that ended last year. She wanted me to slow down and take more vacation. Like, that's not how you stay on top in this industry. My folks never understood that grind mentality. They ran their antique restoration business the same way for 25 years, never tried to expand, never took risks. Speaking of their business, that's where this whole mess started. When COVID hit, everything went to love. Their shop was actually pretty successful before that. They restored old furniture, did custom work for some high-end clients, and had a solid reputation in our city. But when everything shut down, orders dried up overnight. Their regular customers disappeared, new projects got canceled, and suddenly, they'd be sitting on a warehouse full of half-finished pieces and bills they couldn't pay. That's when it started. The calls, the subtle hints about their struggles, the reminiscing about how they'd always been there for me. And yeah, they had been, in their way. They put a roof over my head, sent me to decent schools, public but in a good district, and never missed a birthday. So, when they needed help, I couldn't say no. I started sending them $2,000 every month. It doesn't sound like much compared to some stories I've read on here, but do the math. That's $24,000 a year, $72,000 over 3 years. I could have bought a Tesla with that money. Not that I would, because depreciation is a witch, but you get the point. At first, it felt good, like I was finally paying them back for everything. They were so grateful in the beginning. Mom would cry on the phone, Dad would tell me how proud he was. But you know how these things go. Gradually, the gratitude turned into expectation. The thank yous became shorter. The calls started focusing more on what they needed next. The part that really gets me? My brother, Jake. Dude's 31, lives in their basement with his gaming setup and his streaming career that makes about enough to buy a pizza every month. But somehow, I'm the bad guy. Because I occasionally mention that $2,000 is a lot to send every month. Meanwhile, he's posting on Instagram about his hustle and grind with pictures of his setup and his energy drinks. Real hard worker, that one. I used to defend him when we were kids. He was my little bro, you know, when he got bullied in high school for being the weird kid who was too into anime, I had his back. When he dropped out of community college because school isn't for everyone, I supported him. Told our parents to give him time to figure his love out. Well, it's been 10 years, and the only thing he's figured out is how to mooch more effectively. Looking back now, I can see how it all led to what happened this Christmas. The signs were there. The way Mom would slip Jake's career goals into conversation, how Dad started talking about family legacy and supporting each other, the passive-aggressive texts about how some people have it easier than others. I just never thought it would blow up the way it did. I never imagined I'd end up here, typing this out at 2 in the morning, trying to make sense of how I gave them $72,000, and somehow ended up being the villain in their story. And that's just the setup. Trust me, it gets so much worse. That $2,000 monthly transfer started feeling less like helping family, and more like feeding a black hole. You know that feeling when you're working out and you've got too much weight on the bar? Like, you can still lift it, but your form is suffering, and you know something's going to give? That's how this felt every single month. My typical day starts at 4:30 in the morning. I'm up before the sun, downing pre-workout, and hitting Gold's Gym by 5. I've got to stay sharp in this industry. Surgeons respect you more when you look like you've got your love together. I'm usually the first one there, doing my routine under those flickering fluorescent lights, while the morning crew is still setting up. By 7, I'm showered, suited up, and hitting the road. My territory covers 3 major hospitals and about a dozen smaller surgery centers. Here's what people don't get about medical device sales. It's not just schmoozing doctors. I'm in operating rooms, watching procedures, making sure my equipment works perfectly because someone's life is literally on the line. One screw-up, one moment of not paying attention, and I could lose everything I've built. The pressure is insane. So yeah, maybe I get a little bitter when I'm standing in an operating room for 6 hours straight, watching a complex spine surgery, knowing that $2,000 of my commission is going straight to my parents, while Jake's probably still in his pajamas, streaming Fortnite to his 12 followers. No joke. I checked his Twitch stats once out of curiosity. The most views he ever got was 15, and I'm pretty sure 3 of those were our cousins. The weekly family calls became this weird psychological warfare. Every Sunday at 7 in the evening, like clockwork, Mom would start with the usual stuff. How's work? Am I eating right? Have I met anyone nice? But there was always this undertone, this subtle guilt trip that got less subtle every week. Oh Ryan, you work so hard. We're so proud of you. Translation, you make good money. Why aren't you sharing more? Jake's been making real progress with his channel. Translation, your brother needs better equipment. Hint, hint. The house needs some repairs, but we're managing. Translation, we're expecting next month's check on time. Meanwhile, Jake's voice would pipe up from the background. Yo bro, you should check out my latest stream. Hit a new record for subscribers. Yeah, cool story bro. Pretty sure going from 8 to 9 subscribers isn't exactly setting Twitch on fire. The thing that really gets me? I'd see his Amazon packages piling up on their porch when I'd visit. New gaming chair, LED lights for his studio, some ridiculous $300 microphone setup, all while I'm calculating how many surgeries I need to book to keep up with sending them money. I tried talking to my best friend Mike about it once during our weekly BJJ session. I started taking classes 2 years ago, best stress relief ever. He just looked at me like I was insane. Dude, you're basically paying your brother's allowance at 31, that's messed up. But here's the real kicker. I started noticing weird stuff on social media. Jake would post these long rants about fake successful people and how some folks peaked in high school. I'm pretty sure those were aimed at me, considering I was the captain of the wrestling team while he was trying to start an anime club. The worst part? Mom would like and comment on these posts. Stuff like, everyone has their own path, sweetie. Like, are you serious? You're endorsing this love while cashing my checks? Then Jake started this whole entrepreneurship coach thing on Instagram, posted a picture of himself in front of my Audi that I bought used, mind you, with some BS caption about manifesting success and building an empire. I had to tell him to take it down before my clients saw it. Could you imagine if a surgeon saw that and thought I was associated with his clown show? I started dreading those monthly transfers. Every time I'd hit send on my banking app, I'd feel this knot in my stomach. I started putting off stuff I needed, delayed getting new suits for work, kept driving on tires that needed replacing, skipped a dental cleaning, all while watching Jake post about his latest investments in his streaming career. The real gut punch came during one of our Sunday calls. Mom was going on about how hard things were, and Jake chimes in with, yeah, but at least I'm here for Mom and Dad, not just throwing money at them from a distance. The audacity of this dude, sitting in their basement, contributing nothing, having the nerve to criticize me. So about a week before Christmas, I'm just finishing up a complicated knee replacement case. Shout out to Dr. Anderson, dude's a beast in the operating room, when my phone starts blowing up. 3 missed calls from Mom in the span of 20 minutes. For reference, my mom usually texts once and waits patiently for a response. Multiple calls mean something's either really wrong or she's about to drop some serious manipulation. I step out of the operating room, still in my surgical scrubs, and call her back. Her voice has that tone, You know, the one that's sickly sweet, guilt-dripping tone that makes your stomach drop before she even gets to the point. "Ryan, sweetheart, I was just calling about Christmas dinner, like she's summoning me to court or something. Now, let me paint you a picture of our usual family Christmas. Picture one of those Hallmark movies, then add a healthy dose of passive-aggressive comments, subtract all the joy, and multiply the tension by about 1,000. That's Christmas at my parents' house. But this year, something felt different. Don't forget how important family is, Ryan. We've all sacrificed so much." There it was, the S word. In my family, sacrifice is code for you better show up with your wallet open. Meanwhile, I can hear Jake in the background, probably streaming, his voice doing that fake excited YouTuber thing. "Don't forget to smash that like button, fam." I'm standing there in the hospital hallway, still sweating from being in the operating room for 4 hours, listening to my mom go on about family tradition, while my 31-year-old brother is literally yelling about Twitch subscribers in the background. The contrast was so absurd I almost laughed. But here's where I love up. I decided to go big this year. Like really big. I had just closed a massive deal with a new orthopedic group. The commission hadn't hit yet, but I knew it was coming, and I was feeling generous. I went to Best Buy and dropped $1,800 on this 665-inch OLED TV, top of the line, perfect blacks 120 Hz refresh rate. The kind of TV normal people look at and think, maybe next year. The sales guy at Best Buy, Kevin, a cool dude who actually knows his tech, tried to talk me into the 55-inch instead. "Better value for money," he said. But no, I had to be the big shot. I had to prove something. Looking back, Kevin was trying to save me from myself. "Kevin, if you're reading this, you were right, bro. While I'm picking out the TV, Jake's blowing up our family group chat with links to his latest streams, almost at 100 followers. Narrator, he was not almost at 100 followers. Dad's responding with those generic dad emojis that he thinks make him look tech-savvy. Mom's sending heart reactions to everything. Meanwhile, I'm dropping nearly $2,000 on a TV that'll probably end up being used to watch Jake's streams in cinematic quality. The weird thing was, Dad had been acting strange on our calls lately. Usually, he's the chattier one, always wanting to talk about sports or complain about the neighbors, but lately, radio silence. He'd get on these family calls and just exist, like a statue that occasionally grunts in agreement with Mom. And Mom? She developed this new habit of ending every conversation with some cryptic comment about big changes coming or family pulling together. Real subtle, Mom, about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. Jake suddenly starting to clean up his streaming room, the first time in probably years, Mom asking weirdly specific questions about my work schedule and commission structure, Dad's suspicious silence. It was like watching a horror movie, where you're screaming at the protagonist not to go into the basement. Except I was the dumbass walking down those stairs. The day before Christmas, I'm at the gym, because gains don't take holidays. And I get this text from Jake, "Yo bro, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Got big news to share." First text he'd sent me directly in months that wasn't a stream link or a request to support the channel. That should have been the final red flag, but no. I'm there doing my deadlifts, thinking maybe he's finally grown up, maybe he's got a real job, maybe tomorrow won't be a complete love show. I wrote this nice card about family and appreciation and all that Hallmark crap, talked about how proud I was of them for getting through the tough times after their business closed, how I was happy I could help out. Real emotional stuff that probably ended up in the trash before the TV was even unboxed. Christmas morning started with the kind of winter chill that gets into your bones. I remember sitting in my car outside their house for a good 10 minutes, engine running, heat on full blast, just watching my breath fog up the windows. The Audi's leather seats were cold against my back, and that $1,800 TV was taking up so much space, I had to angle the rearview mirror just to see anything. It was barely 11 in the morning, but I'd already hit the gym. Holiday gains are still gains, meal prepped for the week, because discipline doesn't take holidays, and wrapped that damn TV 3 times because the corners kept tearing. You know that scene in war movies where the soldier takes one last look at a photo before going into battle? That's how I felt, checking my banking app, staring at that $2,000 transfer I'd made 2 days early as a Christmas surprise. 3 years of transfers, never missed one, never late. The things we do for family, right? The moment I walked up to their door, I knew something was off. You know how your childhood home has this specific smell? Like a mix of whatever your mom cooks, and the fabric softener she's used since the 90s? That smell hit me like a wall, but there was something else in the air. Tension. The kind you can taste. Mom opened the door with what I call her real estate agent smile, all teeth, no warmth. She was wearing this Christmas sweater I'd bought her last year, probably for the guilt points, and barely made eye contact as she ushered me in, immediately disappearing into the kitchen with some excuse about checking the turkey. The living room looked like a Twitch streamer's idea of Christmas decor. Jake had apparently convinced them to set up RGB light strips along the ceiling. It's for the holiday aesthetic, Mom. His streaming setup was visible through the basement door. More lights, multiple monitors, and what looked like a new gaming chair. Cool to see where my support money was going. Dad was planted in his recliner, the same one he's had since I was in high school. He gave me this weird nod, like he was acknowledging a stranger at a gas station, not his son on Christmas morning. The TV was playing some basketball game, but his eyes were glued to his phone, probably checking Jake's latest subscriber count or whatever. Speaking of Jake, my brother made his grand entrance about 15 minutes after I arrived, strutting up from his basement lair, wearing what had to be a knockoff Supreme hoodie and carrying his newest streaming accessory, some kind of professional camera setup that definitely wasn't in the budget I'd heard about. Yo, what's good, family? He had that fake YouTuber voice going, the one he uses in his streams, probably force of habit at this point. Big bro, looking corporate as usual. That was a dig at my outfit, nothing fancy, just a decent sweater and jeans, but apparently, anything that's not covered in anime characters counts as corporate in Jake's world. The TV handoff was awkward as hell. I'd barely got the wrapping paper off when Jake started talking about how this would be perfect for his streaming room. Mom jumped in with some weak, "Oh, but it should stay in the living room, honey," while Dad just kept staring at his phone. Cool, just the $1,800 family TV becoming a Twitch backdrop, no big deal. Dinner started like a hostage negotiation, everyone walking on eggshells, passing dishes with forced smiles. Mom's turkey was dry, but I was shoveling it down just to have something to do besides talk. The silence was thick enough to cut with the fancy knife set I'd bought them last Christmas, which, by the way, looked suspiciously unused. Then Jake dropped the bomb. "Must be nice having all that extra cash while your family struggles," he said, with a mouthful of mashed potatoes, not even looking up from his plate. The words hung in the air like smoke, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Before I could process that, Dad cleared his throat. You know that sound people make when they're about to say something they've rehearsed? Yeah, that one. "Son, we need to talk about the monthly support." I remember putting my fork down real slow, like in those movies where you know love's about to go down. Mom's hands were fidgeting with her napkin, a tell she's had since I was a kid. Jake had this smirk on his face that I wanted to wipe off with his knockoff Supreme hoodie. "We think it's time to adjust the amount," Dad continued, still not making eye contact. "Given the current situation, we believe $4,000 would be more appropriate." $4,000. I didn't choke on my food, but it was close. The turkey suddenly felt like sandpaper in my throat. All I could think about was the basic math. That's $48,000 a year, more than some nurses make, more than a lot of people make. "Jake needs some startup capital for his career," Mom chimed in, like she was asking me to pass the gravy instead of double my financial support. "The streaming industry is very competitive, and proper equipment is essential." I looked around the table, at Dad's new smartwatch. When did he get that? At Jake's designer hoodie. Fake or not, that stuff isn't cheap. At the RGB lit room that looked more like a gaming cafe than my childhood home. 3 years of my support, of working extra cases, of skipping vacations, of putting off my own life, and this is what it came to. That's when Jake, my dear brother, decided to really twist the knife. "Yeah, bro, not everyone can sell out for a corporate job. Some of us are trying to build something real here. You ever have one of those moments where you can actually feel your blood pressure rising, where you can hear your heartbeat in your ears, where everything gets kind of quiet and sharp at the same time? Yeah, welcome to my Christmas." I told them I'd think about it and just left. After that Christmas disaster, I spent the next few days in a fog. You know that feeling after a bad breakup where everything feels slightly unreal? Like that, but worse. Because it's your own family that just tried to financially hijack you. I threw myself into work, picked up extra cases, Shout out to the ER docs who actually appreciate someone showing up at 3 in the morning for emergency surgeries, and practically lived at the gym. Speaking of the gym, that's where everything started unraveling. 3 days after Christmas, I'm at this bougie fitness center near the hospital. It's one of those places with actual towel service and water that comes in glass bottles, the kind of place I'd never have dreamed of joining before this job. I justify the expensive membership because it's where a lot of the surgeons work out, and in medical device sales, relationships are everything. I'm in the middle of my deadlift set, 545 pounds for reps, since everyone keeps DMing me about my routine, when I hear someone call my name. I look up to see Mike Peterson, this guy I went to high school with. Mike's in real estate now, does high-end properties in our area. We do that awkward I'm trying to be friendly but also I'm drenched in sweat conversation that happens at gyms. Then he says something that makes me drop the barbell mid-rep. "Hey, saw your parents last week. They're looking at some sweet vacation properties down in Florida. Must be nice to retire in style, right?" The sound of 545 pounds hitting the platform got some looks, but I barely noticed. Vacation properties? Florida? What the actual love? What do you mean vacation properties? I managed to ask, trying to sound casual while my brain was short-circuiting. Mike, bless his unsuspecting heart, just keeps going. "Oh yeah, they're looking at this nice community near Naples, pretty high-end stuff. They mentioned something about selling their business for a good chunk of change a few months back. Smart move in this market." I must have looked like I was having a stroke because Mike quickly changed the subject to asking about protein powder recommendations. But the damage was done. My parents, who I'd been supporting for 3 years because they lost everything in the pandemic, had apparently sold their business and were shopping for vacation homes. Part of being successful in medical device sales is being able to investigate a network, so I did what any betrayed son with a lot of professional contacts would do. I started digging. First call was to Tom, my buddy who works at the bank where my parents have their business accounts. We play poker together monthly, and he owed me for covering his buy-in last game. "Hey man, weird question, but what happened to that antique restoration business on Oak Street?" Tom's response was interesting. Really interesting. "Oh yeah, they sold it in September. Pretty good deal from what I heard." "Why? September?" "They sold the business in September, 3 months ago, while still cashing my $2,000 checks." Next call was to Sarah, who works at the real estate office handling commercial properties in our area. "We dated briefly last year, ended things amicably. Hey, remember that furniture restoration shop my parents owned? Any idea what it sold for?" She couldn't give me exact numbers, confidentiality and all that, but she did drop a hint. Let's just say they won't be worrying about bills for a while. But here's where it gets really good. Remember Jake's streaming setup, those fancy new electronics, that professional camera? I started going through his Amazon reviews. Yes, he actually reviews everything he buys. Like he's some tech influencer. The timestamps on his purchases lined up perfectly with my monthly transfers. They weren't using my money for bills. They were funding Jake's wannabe influencer lifestyle. I went full detective mode, started pulling up old text messages, bank statements, everything. I made a spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm that guy. Tracking when I sent money versus when Jake suddenly got new streaming equipment. The pattern was so obvious it was almost funny. Except it wasn't funny at all. Remember that Christmas sweater Mom was wearing, the one I bought her last year? I found the exact same one listed for sale on her Facebook marketplace, posted 2 days after Christmas. Description, new with tags, unwanted gift. I spent 3 years sending them $2,000 a month. That's $72,000 total. For perspective, that's more than a down payment on a decent house. The cost of a Tesla Model 3, 4 years of in-state college tuition, 36,000 cups of coffee, which I clearly needed to wake up and see what was happening. And what did they do with it? Funded Jake's pipe dreams and apparently went house hunting in Florida. The real gut punch? I found an old email thread between my parents and their business broker from August. They hadn't lost everything during the pandemic. They'd actually pivoted to online sales and done pretty well. The business sold because they wanted to retire, not because they were struggling. Everything, the sad phone calls, the guilt trips, the stories about struggling to pay bills, was all a script, a long con written and performed by my own family, with me as the unwitting ATM. You ever have one of those moments where you're so angry that everything becomes crystal clear, like weirdly calm but in an I might actually flip a table kind of way? That was me, pulling up to my parents' house at 8:06 in the evening on a Tuesday night, still wearing my suit from a day of surgical cases. I'd spent the afternoon in a complex spinal fusion, watching a surgeon literally reconstruct someone's backbone. Funny how life gives you these little metaphors, right? Because that's exactly what I needed, a backbone. My Audi's headlights lit up their garage door like a spotlight. Dad's new car was there, a fresh BMW 3 Series that apparently manifested out of their struggling finances. Real subtle, guys, really selling that poverty narrative. I still had my key. Ironic, given how they'd locked me out emotionally years ago. The house was warm, TV going in the living room, my TV, the $1,800 OLED I'd bought them for Christmas, now playing some Twitch stream. Jake's stream, to be specific, because of course it was. Mom was in her reading chair, scrolling through Zillow, probably checking Florida property prices. Dad was pretending to read the newspaper while actually watching Jake's stream on his phone. And there was Jake himself, sprawled on the couch like some wannabe tech mogul, talking into his new microphone about building an authentic brand to his dozen viewers. The family tableau, picture perfect, until I dropped a thick manila envelope on the coffee table. We need to talk. Jake actually jumped. Mom's phone slipped from her hands. Dad just got very still, like prey animals do when they spot a predator. They knew. They all knew exactly what was in that envelope. "Ryan, honey, we weren't expecting," Mom started, but I cut her off, clearly. I pulled out the first document. So, funny story. Ran into Mike Peterson at the gym. You remember Mike, real estate guy? He mentioned something interesting about vacation properties in Florida. The color drained from Mom's face. Dad suddenly found his newspaper fascinating. That got me thinking, why would my struggling parents, who need $2,000 a month to survive, be looking at vacation homes? So, I did some digging. I started laying out papers like dealing cards, business sale documents from September, bank statements, Jake's Amazon purchase history. I even found their old email threads with the business broker. Jake tried to interrupt. "Bro, you're making this weird. I'm making this weird." The laugh that came out of me didn't sound entirely sane. "You literally wrote, 'Convince R to increase monthly support on your content strategy board.'" I saw the Instagram post, Jake. Real professional, by the way, really selling that influencer lifestyle. Mom tried damage control. "Sweetheart, we can explain." "Explain what?" "How you sold the business for a profit while telling me you were struggling. How you used my money to fund Jake's midlife crisis. Or maybe explain this." I pulled out a printed screenshot of her Facebook Marketplace listing, the Christmas sweater I'd bought her. "At least wait until I leave before reselling my gifts, Mom." Dad finally spoke up, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he used when we were kids. "Now listen here. No, you listen. 3 years of suppressed rage has a way of making your voice carry. I spent 3 years sending you $72,000. I skipped vacations, delayed buying a house, put off my own life, and the whole time, you were lying to me." Jake made the mistake of smirking. "Not our fault you're dumb enough to—" I took one step toward him, just one, but those BJJ classes must have shown in my movement, because he literally sank deeper into the couch. Funny how a basement-dwelling streamer loses his nerve when confronted by someone who doesn't just talk tough in a gaming chair. "I've got an itemized list of everything you bought with my money," I continued, pulling out more papers. The streaming equipment, Dad's BMW, the Florida property viewings. I even found the receipt for Jake's fake Supreme merch. Real, authentic brand building there, bro. Mom was crying now, not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but real ones. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Jake was trying to disappear into the couch cushions. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady. "The monthly transfers stop today. I've already set up alerts with my bank. Any attempts to guilt-trip me, manipulate me, or squeeze more money out of me will result in me posting every single piece of evidence I have online. Every receipt, every lie, every manipulation. I'm sure Jake's 12 followers would love to see how authentic his brand really is." The silence was deafening. Even Jake's stream chat had gone quiet, probably wondering why their favorite content creator was suddenly looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Ryan, please, Mom tried one last time. We're family." "No," I replied, gathering my documents. "Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't lie, manipulate, and steal from each other. You're not my family. You're just people who saw me as an ATM." I walked out, leaving them with their fake Supreme merch, their BMW payments, and their Florida dream homes. The last thing I heard was Jake's stream notification. Dank member 420 has unfollowed. Perfect love ending. Final update, it's been 6 months since the confrontation, and let me tell you how it all went down after I cut them off financially. First, Jake's streaming career imploded. Turns out, when you can't keep buying new equipment and paying for bot followers, it's hard to maintain the illusion of success. His subscriber count, the real ones not the bots, dropped from his peak of 15 to a solid 3. I'm pretty sure one of those is his alt account. Then, the truth about their struggling business started spreading in our community. Remember my friend Mike from GIM? Turns out, real estate agents talk a lot. Soon, everyone knew how they'd sold the business for a profit while still taking money from their son. The looks they get at church must be interesting. The Florida dream home? Gone. Their realtor friend, who's now my realtor friend, funny how that works, told me they had to pull out of all property viewings. Apparently, their retirement fund wasn't as robust as they thought once they lost their monthly Ryan supplement. But here's the best part. 3 weeks ago, I'm finishing up a complex case at the hospital. A 12-hour surgery. The kind that reminds you why you got into medical device sales in the first place. Saving lives, making a difference, all that good stuff. I check my work email afterward, and there it is, a message from Mom, sent to my company email because I'd blocked her everywhere else. The subject line, "We need to talk, urgent family matter." The email was a masterpiece of desperation. Turns out, Jake's car wasn't the only thing they bought on credit, that BMW Dad was so proud of, also financed. The new furniture they bought for their imaginary Florida home? Credit cards. They'd been living large on the assumption that their personal ATM, me, would keep dispensing cash. Now they're drowning in debt, real debt. Not the fake kind they pretended to have before. Jake had to sell his streaming setup piece by piece on eBay. I saw the listings. It's painful how much technology depreciates. He's working at GameStop now, which would be ironic if it wasn't so sad. Apparently, telling customers why they should buy the extended warranty isn't quite as glamorous as being a Twitch star. Mom's email ended with a proposal. If I agreed to help them temporarily with their bills, they'd give me partial ownership of their house. You know, the house they claimed they might lose, the one that's probably mortgaged to hell by now. Hard pass. I sent back a one-line reply, "New phone, who this?" Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Last I heard, Jake's trying to rebrand himself as a financial advisor on TikTok because, apparently, giving advice about money is his thing now. His first video? How to build wealth through family connections. The audacity is almost impressive. Mom still sends the occasional text from new numbers. The last one said, they're ready to rebuild our relationship on new terms. Yeah, the terms where their ATM got shut down and they actually have to live within their means. Tough terms, those. The TV I bought them for Christmas? They tried to sell it on Facebook Marketplace last week. Listed it as like new, barely used, $2,000 OBO. Kind of like our relationship, they tried to squeeze more value out of it than it was worth, and ended up with nothing.